Hey folks, my name's Kevin and it's time for a little bit more knife nerdery, and today we're going to be unboxing, I'm guessing something pretty crazy. I honestly don't know. What's in here is 4 knives. 2 of them are mine and 2 of them are from my friend Marco, aka Knives of the Round Table. And if you haven't checked his channel out, I'll link it down below. Go check it out. Awesome channel, awesome content, awesome guy. Okay, so if you recognize his name, it's probably because the last time he sent me a box, it had some kind of insanity in it. How this all started is I lent him my TRM Shadow and TRM Adam to check out because he was only able to get his hand on the Nerd and he has much bigger hands and it just wasn't the right fit for him. And when he sent those back, he sent it with 2 surprises. And those surprises turned out to be a freaking Peter Rezenti CKF Snafu 3.0 and a Shirogorov F3NS. Holy crap. So when I mailed those back to him, I wanted to send him something kind of equally fun and that I hadn't seen on his channel before. So I sent him my nude Holt Haptic and my Brown Knives Cortex. Now, he's finally sent those back to me, and I have no idea what's in here. He said there's 2 knives, and the only clues I know is that I told him that when he sent those to me that I was going to be traveling for a few weeks and that I wasn't going to be able to get to them right away. And so he told me that he was going to send things that he wasn't going to miss terribly if it took a while for me to get them back. And then also that they wouldn't be quote unquote summer knives, because that's part of like something he wouldn't miss right away. I don't really know what that means. I'm guessing summer knife to me probably means like lighter weight, maybe lighter materials, something like that. So I don't know if this is going to be like a big chunky thing. The only other clue that I have is that he said he really liked the fact that he was able to, and I also hugely appreciated this, but he said he really liked the fact that he was able to send me things that were kind of outside my regular comfort zone because he knew that there were things I wasn't going to experience otherwise. And yes, I loved that. So whatever in here is going to be like a winter knife, that is probably something I haven't checked out. I do not expect him to meet, let alone up the ante from what he did last time, because I honestly have no idea how someone could escalate from what he sent last time, because those were freaking insane. Anyways, if you've clicked the thumbnail, you already know what I don't know. The only other thing I know is that I see this kind of sticking out right here, so I have to be careful of how I open this up so I don't cut whatever is inside here. To open it up, since my Holt Haptic is in there, my other Holt Haptic, I'll use that to open it up. And let's figure out how to get in here in a safe way. How does this open? Maybe I'll be able to come at it from this side. Kind of looks like maybe this side opens up. This looks like one of those knife boxes that kind of I get it right in there. I just don't want to cut whatever that is. Aha, I was right. This is one of those knife boxes that has a seam along this edge. So theoretically, I'll be able to get in here now. Oh, no, I still have to cut this tape. Okay, I'm gonna have to be very, very careful here. Okay, let's get started. So this looks like it would be my knives being returned to me. I believe that's the case I sent it to him in. Yes, okay. So this is something that showed up on the channel before. This is my Craig Brown from Brown Knives, not to be confused with Brian Brown from Brian Brown Knives. This is my Craig Brown Cortex, and yeah, okay. Oh, love it. Okay, what else do we have? This I don't know if actually ever made it onto the channel. I think it showed up in another video, but I don't know if that video even showed up on the channel yet. Okay. Okay, so they're finally back together. Look how beautiful they are. This one is in the Sea Breeze pattern, I believe at 82 volt, 85 volt, something like that. And this is in the Quill pattern. Very similar, but distinct. You can see this one swoops back, and this one has just kind of like a more flow forward. This is Quill, obviously meant to look like a feather, and Sea Breeze meant to look like, I don't know, I guess waves. I like even more than that the wave one is in the blue. The action on these is different. Like they both do the free fall, but this one is meaningfully slower. It's not that that's slow, but like that compared to that. You can hear how much force it hits with. Whew! I've missed you. I've missed you, baby. You're so good. Okay, let's not spend the entire time talking about my own knives. Let's get to what is in here. What do we have? There's 2 pouchy things. One is big and one is small, and both have enough heft to them that I can understand why he would call these not summer knives. Let's start with the big one. What is in here? What is in here? What is in here? Oh, cool. Okay. So this is an Olamic Wayfarer 247 or 24/7, aka a knife design that you would carry it with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have never gotten to experience one of these before. This is a big boy. Let me pull out. Okay, so here are two other Olamics to give you a sense of things. That's the busker and the whippersnapper and the 24/7 Wayfarer 24/7. These two are both designed by the same guy. This one's not. Let's start talking about this. The Wayfarer 24/7 is the production-y version of the custom knife that kind of started the folders for Olamic. The original design was a collaboration between the guy who founded Olamic, Eugene Solomonov, I think it's Solomonic. I don't remember exactly what his last name is, but Eugene from Olamic and Mike Vagnino. That's the master bladesmith that still to this day runs the small team of knife makers in their shop in California. And the original Wayfarer, now called, I think, the Wayfarer Classic, that is a completely handmade knife, no CNC whatsoever. This, which is a slimmed down version, this is a reasonably big knife. I don't know the stats on it, but this is the reasonably big knife. This is a smaller version that's done the same way that these are, where the parts are made, I'm pretty confident, in Italy, and then they're taken back over, and all of this like very elaborate customization and finishing is all done in the States. Okay, this is cool. There's so much going on here. That is a heck of a flipper tab. And then that is small compared to where I expect. Let's just give this a shot. That flicked really well. And look at the shape of this thing overall. Okay, so this is going to be in their harpoon blade, which means if we find where it says the serial number. Okay, right there, you'll see, Wayfarer 24/7 H for harpoon. You can see this is number, I don't know the T, but 517H. Okay, they do have other blade shapes. They've got like a drop point, they've got a Tanto, they've got one that's like adorably named a sheep's cliff, poking fun at the fact that it's not quite a Warncliffe, not quite a sheep's foot. They just introduced a whole bunch of new ones of these. Something piratey themed. I think they called it like the cutlass or something. It just looks kind of like a swashbuckling sword. A different kind of Warncliffe. I think they also has a punny kind of name, and a different kind of Tanto. They just introduced a whole bunch of new ones in these, and so this is what they're currently making a batch over. Maybe they just finished. I don't know. Point is they are making 24/7 still. This is in what they call their acid rain pattern, where they do really extensive weight relief, not by internal milling, but milling all the frick through. So they're doing it on front and back. This blade here appears to be in their acid wash finish, and handles sure do match it well. So I'm not sure exactly how they're accomplishing this. There's some kind of, I'm saying maybe like darkening of the tie, because tie doesn't acid wash the same way, but you can blacken tie, and then they appear to have stone washed that, and so that is they did a very good job of matching those. I think my camera is making this look a slightly different hue, and it is slightly different hue, but in person, that's a very, very good match. And then this is kind of rainbowy, but it looks like it might just be skin oils. Let me rub that down and see if that comes back to a more natural color. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of wear on that. I'm guessing this probably is a blue or a purple, but it probably is a blue given that these are all blue. These, look at the chamfers on that, glowing. And matching that polished blue back there and the blue here. Oh, and then we've got all of the hardware. Yeah, all the hardware is bronze. This is a really cool color scheme. Yeah, you can see this one is much, much more blue. And so I think this fading here is just probably from anno wear, just from fingers. Or it's possible also that if I like sprayed some Windex on that or something, it would come back to blue. Wow, this is cool. That is interesting. Right off the bat, I'm noticing that there is a hole here and a hole here that don't have the same chamfer as the others. And yeah, I'm also noticing that if they were to add in that chamfer, you can see that the chamfer is a larger radius than the holes themselves. And so if they were to add in that chamfer, it would come out over this edge and over that edge. So that could be why they didn't do them, but it does seem kind of strange that they would have drilled those in the first place. But the acid rain pattern has the kind of randomized holes all over it in the first place. And so I don't think, I mean, it strikes me as odd that these are all like that except one, but they did it at least on the end one on both of these. I don't know. It's a weird look to me, but it doesn't really bug me. How does this feel in hand? The ergos in that are fantastic. Holy crap. I didn't know, I thought this would be kind of big, but this is, ooh, that feels, my hand just like melts into that. One thing though, is that this is shaped, like the shape of this is like very specific. This is one of those kind of like trigger grip gun, like I think that's what people call it. The grip on this is like very pointed forward. Like it feels more like a gun grip. I guess that's deliberate. I don't know. How do I feel? I mean, it is deliberate. How do I feel about that? I don't normally like it too much, but honestly, it means that it's easy to cut with this edge. There is a really big recurve on the harpoon one, and I don't love recurves, but that's mostly out of fear of sharpening. From a usage standpoint, recurves are actually quite nice. It helps you stay in the cut because as you're going through, the material kind of wants to slide up this way instead of sliding out. How does this feel in like a pinch grip? Oh, I love it. So the whole point of harpoon blades is, aside from just a very specific and cool aesthetic, is it gives you a spot for you to push your finger against. And the way this curves, this is tailor-made for a pinch grip. Oh, that feels perfect. Now it does have the tip up reasonably high, but this part here could act as like a tip. If you're cutting, you can just cut with this part, kind of the way you would on a Tanto, just because of how stark that transition is. If I'm holding it here, yeah, I can push my thumb all the way up there. Yeah, that's a thumb ramp. Can I choke up? Yeah. Now, I have medium glove size hands, and so for me, I can choke up, and this doesn't hit me, but I do feel that I'm up against that. So I think if you have bigger hands, you'd probably want to use just the tip of your finger or pull back some. I think this works as a choke up fingery choil spot, especially for my hands, but it's not like a full on choil. But there is plenty of real estate here. My medium glove size hands, I get all four fingers back here. I think if you have bigger hands, you're going to curl back and just roll off onto that part. Yeah, so this is a more full size knife. It's funny, it's a different designer, but like it fits right in with the kind of odd but purpose-driven ergonomic shapes of their other knives. Like they make weird-looking knives, but when you hold them in hand, like I said, my immediate reaction to that is it just freaking melts in my hand. Okay, they always make very stiff knives. Their lock bars are always very strong, and they do this weird thing. Okay, right off the bat. Oh, this is not what I was going to talk about, but that is immediately grabbing my attention. So every Olamic knife I've handled has a really, really well implemented detent ball ramp when it comes to there's no bump up on and there's like no ability to detect the top of the ramp, because rather than having a standard cliff top where there's like a corner right there for it to bounce over, they round that top. I'm going to make my fingers do that correctly. And so it's a smooth transition. The problem on this knife, and the problem with any kind of late detent, that's how late you actually are encountering that ramp, is if it has a flipper tab. Look at like where the flipper tab is going to be crushing your finger. And I'm finding that there is no place. Okay, so if I like full on crush my thumb, I'm not like hurting myself, but if I'm pressing down on my thumb to the point where I feel it and don't want to be doing that, it's now up on the detent ball, and then I could, nope, it bounced right back. So my point of all of this is that there is not really going to be a drop to your thumb story here, because this flipper tab is never going to drop to your thumb and be past this detent ball ramp. So this is definitely meant to be closed this way, slow roll like that. Whether you're using one hand or two, this is definitely meant to like open it, close it at all, and then use that really, really well implemented detent ball ramp to slow push it home. And honestly, it works. It works great for that. This one does have jimping right here, and I noticed, so like for example, over here, the way that this jimping works, when I slow close this home, I'm not actually touching that jimping. I could touch that jimping probably, but I'm past it. But I noticed maybe just from my hand size, the placement of this jimping means that as I'm pushing this home, I'm rubbing on the jimping itself, and that's a little bit less comfortable. The jimping is, did I just fail that? So is this susceptible to lock bar? Yeah, that's susceptible to lock bar pressure. So I think I was just pushing on that. The jimping here is much, much wider and much, much deeper. This is not the kind of jimping that I like, and it's very different from the jimping on either of these two. This is like the little crenulation style jimping where it's just little up and down zigzags. This is a much more like rounded pyramidal kind of jimping, but it still has grippy corners. And this is like, big old troughs, but there's literally 2 jimping lines or 3 canyons. I don't know. I need to learn better terminology for those things. It grips me really, really well. It's just not super comfortable, which is ironic because this is so comfortable. And so it's weird that this spot here is not comfortable given how comfortable that is. What I was originally going to say when I noticed this detent ball ramp is that they do a weird thing on Olamic's knives where, let me see, do I have any other knives sitting around? Yeah, okay, so this is the TW Price Dawn. So on a normal knife, the lock bar is pushed over in the open position, and then when you get it up onto the detent ball, it's now flush. This is it's now like it's as if it didn't bend. It's now a perfectly straight line. And when you then let it close and that detent ball pops into place, it ever so slightly goes in, but it never goes past that line. And the over travel stop, if you look at like where the over travel stop stops you, it's with the wall being parallel there. Olamic does this weird thing where when I said over here, when the detent ball pops in, it goes ever so slightly in. On Olamic's, when the detent ball pops in, that's when it's flush. And so when it's traveling on the detent ball, it's actually overextended, just the slightest bit. Like you can see my fingernails catching on it right there. And it's just a weird thing. I honestly don't think I've seen, I don't think I've seen anyone else do that. And it's weird, and I don't really like it because what it means is that there's just more kind of pressure here in this system. Like if they're going to have a shallow detent, they don't have a shallow detent engagement. Whoa. On every one that I've ever seen, they've got a reasonably shallow detent engagement. You can see there's this whole gap right here where the detent ball is not actually all the way in. This looks like it's all the way in. Wow. Okay, that could explain why I'm getting a firmer detent on this. But yeah, what I was getting at is by the fact that they're having to kind of bend the lock bar out past that, it means that there's just a lot of pressure on this last little bit here. And this last little bit here is the point of where the detent ball is gliding on the tang. And so it's always just a very tight feeling. Now, they do a fantastic job of polishing that track and using a ceramic detent ball that has a very wide detent ball. And so this is always an exceptionally glassy, smooth transition. It's just so tight. And you don't need to do it that way. And I don't know, maybe they love it way, maybe they did it that way on purpose, but I've never liked it that way. Okay, I haven't used this yet. This is, I said it's in it's smaller than I expected. Like it's a kind of small hole for how big this overall knife is. And it's very narrow this way. So you definitely can't get your finger into this much. I'm going to see if I can even flick it with my nail. I think I'm going to, I'm just going to fail. Okay, so let's see if I can use the meat of my finger. Can I actually use this? Yeah, okay, that is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Am I making sure that my fingers aren't on the lock bar? Oh, yeah, no, the geometry here, like there's no way to push on this in a comfortable way. You have to kind of push out. What if I turn it Oof. Okay, so far I am not liking the design of this. I have no chance of doing this, do I? I'm not going to bother. Yeah, this is a surprisingly hard to use hole here. Like I think where I'm getting success right now is not using the top of it, but using the bottom. That gives my lever arm a little bit more lever arm distance, and so I have a little bit more torque I can put on it, and then I'm pushing. Yeah, okay, so where I'm landing on this is using the bottom and pushing outward as much as I can rather than upward. And it's not great, but that is very, very good. Like, that's very effective. And so I guess they are getting away with that. What else would I want to say about this? The weight for its size is actually not bad at all because of this just massive amount of weight relief. They will do all sorts of weird sculpting and whatnot, and so as a result, they never do internal weight relief, internal skeletonization, because they want to be able to carve into this surface, and if they had internal skeletonization, they would risk breaking through and into those pockets that they'd make. So instead, if you want weight relief, they're going to do this whole thing, and it's I don't like speed holes on knives, but this hardly feels like speed holes. Like, they call it acid rain for a reason. It feels like something entirely all its own. So this doesn't actually weigh all that much. Where is the balance point is like perfect. Ooh, yeah, that's delightful. Yeah, no wonder this feels so good. Okay, so this is a weird knife, and this is a knife that I certainly won't be buying. I don't like this aspect enough, and it's just meaningfully bigger than I really want. And I definitely wouldn't get the version with a recurve in it. But you know, the sheep's footy one. I think the big thing for me is I'm not super fond of this kind of trigger grippy thing with it pointing all the way forward. But honestly, maybe with the fact that if I got the sheep's footy one and I used it in a pinch grip, it does feel so freaking good in a pinch grip. So anyway, this is super cool. I definitely was not intending to ever pick one of these up, and so I don't think I would have ever tried one of these on my own. Oh, I guess the other thing I would point out is just that there is the hollow in the flipper tab. That is a very weird thing. You don't ever see a cutout in a flipper tab. So it's just, but that definitely is in keeping with the massive skeletonization. Okay, let's, I guess I didn't talk about this yet. Deep carry is not at all, so right to there. But they are doing the same thing with the standoffs here. And so you do have like total clearance. You don't have to do the whole like recessed screws thing because there's nothing in the pathway. And they're also doing the detent ball as the point. And I've said before, this is not my favorite way of doing a clip because it puts 100% of the pressure of the lock bar on the very top point. And so as you run this in and out of your pocket, rather than spreading that pressure out over a wider distance, it's all in that one spot. It's going to wear into the material faster. And I know a lot of people who have because they always carry the same knife every day and because they always stick it in and out of the exact same corner side part of their pocket, that it just runs a line in and eventually rips their pants. Okay, anyway, I think I'm going to move on because this is a pretty long video. This is super freaking cool. Okay, this one is much smaller, but heavy. I do like chunk little nugget knives. And what do we have here? Oh, cool. Okay, so this is a Curtis Knives F3, and at this size, it has to be the compact. He makes, I think, 3 different sizes, at least 2 different sizes. I think he makes a full, like a compact, a medium, and a large. Look at this. Wow. Okay, so we've got big old chunks of titanium that have been flame anodized. Instead of doing like tiger striping, he's doing these like kind of dashes, and that is echoing this milling pattern, which looks like jigged bone. So that's a texture pattern that you'll find on traditional knives, that they'll carve the bone. The bone is usually like cow bone or something like that, and they'll carve these little notches into it, and it's called jigging. I don't know why. I don't know where that name comes from. And yeah, so this has that milled over it, which gives it this really cool Look, that's really fun. And then, like I said, the flame arrow is done in these stripes that mirrors that. And then the blade is obviously some kind of Damascus. I think Curtis uses like actual name brand Damascus steel. We'll talk about all of these things in a moment. I've got to open this up. This is a heck of a flipper tab. This is one of those things that legitimately very much looks like a bird. Like if you just think about a cartoon bird, this is an eyeball. There's the pupil. This is a beak. It even has like a little mouth opening. This is like a wing back here. It really just looks like it needs little feet. And you're like, anyway, Nick Shabazz would obviously call this a pocket pecker. It's an interestingly shaped flipper tab because it has this big curve right here, which feels very nice to put your finger down on. And then there's a jimped spot up here. And the jimping on that feels a little bit weird because I wouldn't expect you to have jimping or need jimping to kind of like, jimping again, remember, it works, jimping adds traction if you're moving across it. So I wouldn't expect you to be pulling across back here. If you're gonna be doing a light switch, I would expect you to be using this surface. But it looks like I could use this as a push button. So if a flipper tab has a flat and you can push on that flat, you got to make sure that that flat has a lever arm distance. Like if you follow the trajectory of that flat, is it pushing into the pivot or not? And so this is not, which means I think I can use this push button. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Oh, that felt great. I'm going to have to try that again. Oh, whoa. Okay, I'm going to have to play with that too. The sound that made when it closed. Okay, let me try the light switchy version. Oh, wow, the action on that is so nice. Wow, that feels nice. And, okay, let's see if I can hear this again. Do you hear that ting? Oh, okay. So I thought when it did that ting, I thought this might be a tappy clip. It's a clip that is not fully touching, and if you tap it, it will ting down onto it. And it's not. That ting is the clip resonating, but it's just because of this hollow pattern he has. I'm personally not into the kind of bullseye look of this because I'm just not a firearms person. But yeah, the skeletonization in the hair. Let's just hear that again. Oh, I love that. Can we do that up by the mic? Oh, man, gotta do that again. I love that. It's so snappy, such a strong little pop in, and then it rings like that. I'm assuming that if I put my fingers on this, yeah, that deadens it. It's a very poppy detent in the first place. Like it kind of pops out, and as a result, man, the push button on this, that is phenomenal. Phenomenal. It has this like, there's just enough weight here. This is a reasonably thick blade. And look at the cool edge end cut Damascus steel right there. Anyway, there's enough weight in this, even though it's a really short blade. And this detent is strong enough. It's quite strong and but poppy. And then there's such a smooth transition here. Wow, that this push button, just phenomenal. Yeah, so I need to back up. What is this? What is Curtis Knives? Curtis Knives, I believe his name is David Curtis. He's a custom knife maker. I want to say from Indiana. I have absolutely no idea why knowledge like that stays in my brain when I read it. But these are completely customs. Now they do use CNC, but these are completely in-house customs, and everything's done by him. My understanding is I think literally everything is done by him. He might source the screws, but he's one of those people that tries really hard to do everything US, and so there are going to be at least US made screws. We have to talk about this pivot in just a moment, but let's talk about this blade. We have got the F3, you can see it. It's hard to kind of see, but there's the letter F and the letter 3 there. I've never researched what that name means. I don't know if that's a reference to something. I don't know if there's an F2. I don't know if the F stands for something in particular, but I know that the F3 comes in several different sizes and several different blade shapes. It even has a Warncliffe one that I actually quite like the look of. And the modern version of these have like a pocket here, and they even have flipperless versions, and that one would be flickable. I think that would be really cool to see. This particular blade is a Tanto style blade with a compound grind. And so what we see is that there's a hollow grind right here, and it looks just gorgeous. And then there's a flat grind up here, and there's that really delightful curve back as it meets. We have a completely flat edge right there, and then that curve up, and there's our little corner. So this is the kind of thing where it's going to be slicier back here, because if that's actually, yeah, that's thinning out pretty well. That gets pretty thin back here for how thick this blade stock is, but I'm at, yeah, oh my God, look at that. Because this is a flat grind and because the grind is so short up here, this is an absolute nugget wedge of a tip. So the top end of this is a pry bar with an edge ground onto it, and it does feel very sharp. So I think you could do some very significant scraping and even prying with this tip, but back here, because of the hollow, it's going to be much, much slicier. Now, obviously, with blade stock this thick, you're not going to be pushing through double-walled cardboard like a laser beam. This is going to wedge like crazy. But if you're cutting through things that are short enough that you get through the entire material by the time you get up to the part of this that thickens back out, this is going to actually be a really good slicer still, because this hollow does get very thin. We've got this jimping at the top that just looks painful. Yeah, okay, how do I feel about that? Yeah, I hate it. I hate this jimping. It's extremely effective. Like, this is exceptionally gripping my hand, but you can see just how deep these are and how small the tops are. It's like little tiny razors, man. So this is a very effective jimping. How does this feel in my hand? This is such a thick nugget of a knife. I'm going to talk about that clip in a moment, because wow, I'm not liking that clip. In my medium glove size hands, I can actually get 4 full fingers on that. I didn't know. I'm really glad I got to check this out. I've always wanted to see one of the compacts. And yeah, I can get a full 4-finger grip. I think if you have anything above my size hands, and a lot of people do, you're definitely going to be rolling off. But there's this spot up here that I assume can be used as a choil. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have big hands, you want to come at it kind of sideways. The same kind of thing that was happening on the other one, the Wayfarer. They did a good job. They do the same thing where they like kind of cut this going forward, and so it's not jabbing you. And this is actually pretty comfortable. I'd say comfortable everywhere except for this clip. Let's finally talk about this clip. Okay. This is one of his iconic things. He uses this clip. It is super not deep carry. Gotta love that. It's got this bullseye on it, which is very recognizable. I mean, if you're into that, I get why people like it. You know, I personally don't like the skull clips on Chavez knives, but some people love the hell out of them, and so they want to have the little skull sticking out. Some people really, really want to have this little bullseye sticking out of their pocket. It is, yeah, it's like an effective feeling clip, but it's this bent clip, thing. And so it just has like kind of hard corners everywhere. And so every single time I was just holding this in my hand, it's just poking me everywhere. This clip is also long enough with how it's attached that it is hitting me in all the wrong spots. Like this whole big lip right here. This is reminiscent of the front of like a Lynch clip. That or MXG makes some that same kind of way, where it has this kind of like bubble that just sticks straight up. And that feels fine-ish if it's landing in exactly the right spot in your hands, but it just has this top part. And so if I'm choked up, that's better, because that's not, and even there, it's starting to hit right past this curve in my hand. So it's starting to hit into this thick spot, and that does not feel great. And if I'm choked back, then it's digging right into that. And then these are just corners. Yeah, I'm gonna go on a limb and say, I hate this clip. It's stylistically not for me, and ergonomically not at all for me, but it is stylized, and I'll give him credit for it being stylized. So if you like the style, then it's probably a really, really cool clip to you. Now, time to talk about this pivot. This is a big deal because I believe this is patented. So he has this really big pivot, and it has the same kind of thing. It again also is firearms reminiscent, at least. Like this looks like another, like a bullseye, and this, I think at least looks like, the chamber on a revolver or something like that. I think that's what that's supposed to be feeling reminiscent of. I don't know. I've never read that anywhere, but that's what it clearly immediately looks like to me, especially with that. But this is doing some weird things. He has a name for it. It's an acronym. I think he calls it, it's a tip of my tongue. S.P.O.T. It's his S.P.O.T. pivot, and it stands for stop pin over travel. Yeah, there we go. So this is acting as the over travel. Like, okay, so this is the the Wii version of the Shamwari. So this also has an oversized Well, in this case, it's a pivot collar, but it has an oversized ring up here around the pivot that's acting as the over travel stop. And this is doing the same thing there, but it's doing more than that, because if you look at this is the actual pivot screw itself, but it is acting as an over travel stop. You can't push past it. It's also acting as a lock bar stabilizer, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to see one of these in person. Because, so, you know, Hinderer has his lock bar stabilizer, and he goes out of his way to call it a lock bar stabilizer. He even had that video that people kind of gave him crap for a while ago because of just the way he presented himself in it. But that video where he talks about celebrating his accomplishment of inventing the over travel stop and lock bar stabilizer. And the thing about Hinderer's lock bar stabilizer, and he talks about this in that video, it has to be placed about a third of the way up the lock bar. Because if you think about the way that lock bars work, they move over. And since the lock bar stabilizer is something that's being attached to the outside, it's not super deep. And so if the lock bar is moving over away from it, then at some point the lock bar will just move past that thing that you're attaching on. And so if you take the over travel stop and put it further up, it just won't be sitting underneath the lock bar anymore. So the lock bar will have actually moved past it, out of the way. And so the thing about that is, like, that will still work totally fine as a over travel stop, but he wants it to be a lock bar stabilizer. So he has to pull it back far enough that it's underneath the bar still. But the problem with that, the reason why it doesn't really work all that well, is that you're reducing the lever arm here. That's flexible, titanium is flexible. So you're reducing the lever arm, which means you're making it less flexible. It's a stiffer, smaller piece, but it's still, you're only able to put that a third of the way up. And so it's still kind of flexible. There were plenty of videos of people that there have been for like however long he's been making that, you know, decade plus, however 20 years ago. I don't remember when he made that. But even when he pushed that thing most recently, there was a bunch of videos of people showing how if you just push on the end of a Hinderer, that it will flex. This is changing all of that, because this is putting the over travel stop and lock bar stabilizer right at the end of that bar, right where you're applying force. And because these handles are so thick, this wouldn't work if you made a thinner knife. Because these handles are so thick and this pivot that's acting this way is such a thick piece of metal, you can see it actually is still underneath the bar in this dimension. Like, it's blocking it in this dimension, but it's also still present. Is my light good enough to see that? It's still present right there in this dimension. So if I push down on this, it goes absolutely nowhere. There's the tiniest little wiggle, and then I immediately touch that bar. Yeah, it actually does work. If I push down, I can see it flex the slightest little tiniest dot, and then it immediately hits the edge of that and can't go any further. So in my view, it takes a lot of real estate, but this is, and it also requires a very thick knife, but Hinderer knives are very thick. This is a much more legitimately effective way of doing a lock bar stabilizer. It just is. But I said this is called the stop pin. S.P.O.T, S-P-O-T, the stop pin over travel, because I've never taken one of these apart. I'm not going to take this one apart, but I've watched videos of these taken apart. And he also does a unique way of doing a captive pivot, because this doesn't have a stop bar visible anywhere. I mean, stop pin visible anywhere. It's going to be an internal stop pin, and it's going to be, can we see it with light? If I show something below, do you see that right there? Do you see that bar? So it's staying in place and it's traveling through a smile-shaped arc. It's this pin right there. It's traveling through a smile-shaped arc in the blade. And it's staying in place, but if you look at like where it's positioned, it's right here underneath this pivot. And so my understanding, I don't know which one of these sides is tooled. I mean, they're both tooled, but one of them is free spinning, one of them isn't. One of them is captive. I think this is the side that comes out. Yeah, that makes sense. You see how this is perfectly straight up and down in line, and see how this one is cocked slightly to the side? This must be the side that comes out. And the stop pin, rather than just being pushed into the blade, into the handles, the holes that it sits in actually go all the way through on both sides. And so it sticks out, the stop pin sticks out past that, and there's a little tiny notch, a hole stuck into the back, carved into the back of the pivot. And so the pivot, the side that is the actual pivot side that has this chunk on it, pushes down on, and that stop pin nestles into the little pocket there and makes it so that it can't turn. So it looks round. It doesn't rely on some kind of asymmetry there, but it's the stop pin itself that's actually holding this in place and making it not captive. Now on the other side, in all of the disassembly videos I've ever been able to see, they do drill it all the way through, but I think it's just flush on that side. I don't think it actually sticks out on this side, and this side does turn. The fact that it has this kind of thing here is a little bit annoying to me because it looks at first glance like it's going to be a crosshead screwdriver, something like a Phillips screwdriver, but it's not because it's super duper shallow. So you would have to use a flat head screwdriver for this. But the other thing is that it's kind of shallow and it's made of titanium. And so just like trying to open up a Shirogorov knife, you run the risk of like making nicks into this, because if you take a flathead screwdriver, it's going to push under the corners of it, and the screwdriver is made out of tool steel and this is made out of titanium, so it's going to hurt that. And so what I always do if I'm using something like this or I'm trying to open up one of my Shiros is I take a cleaning cloth, or you could even use something like this that it came in, just something thin but flexible, and just wrap that around the top of it and then use that. So just wrap a piece of cloth over the top, and then you'll provide a cushion but still be able to do it. Wow, I've been talking for a long time about this. How do I feel about it overall? That action is superb. It's tight enough. It's tight enough that what is rattling there? Oh, that's interesting. So this is super freaking bank vaulty feeling when it's open, but when this is on this, it's got like a pivot lash, side to side, and in and out. Oh, that's really interesting to see. So in and out means that the size of the hole cut into the blade is larger enough than the actual pivot diameter the barrel diameter, that it can wiggle, but it's also wiggling side to side, where in this case up and down. I'm talking about like this way. I don't like that. Given how incredibly this feels fixed blade-esque. So given how incredibly locked up this feels, I don't like that it makes all this rattling as it goes down. That kind of hurts the experience for me, and especially if I'm trying to shake it down, it does a bunch of literal rattling noise. But what does it take to close that? It does not take much, but this is very stiff. So this is certainly not going to free fall. Let's see if I try to close it. Yeah, okay. So it's not hard to close. If you try to close it, you can close it very easily. But it's definitely the kind of thing that you have to shake home. How sensitive to lock bar pressure is this? Tremendously. That means we must have, yeah. So you can see, just like on the other one, this is completely flush up against the blade, which means we have fully deep D10 ball engagement, which is how we're getting that poppy action. If you ever have an action, a D10 that makes like a kind of a ting as it's popping out, it's what's happening there is that you have fully deep engagement. So you're all the way down in the D10 ball to the point where you're at a point that is nearly straight vertical. And so it's going to take a lot of force to push it up this, because the slope of this is so steep. A lot of D10 ball only sit to about like there, so they have an engagement more like that. So it's kind of more like a more subtle ramp to go up. But if you come all the way down on a D10 ball, you're almost pushing on a completely flat wall. And so that's what's going on here. And that means it's really susceptible to lock bar pressure, because it means that a very small component of your force is pushing the D10 ball out instead of pushing the ball that way. And so if you then magnify that by pressing on it, it's like, you know, it doesn't even remotely add up math-wise. But it's not hard to keep my finger off that. There's a really huge pivot. There's a really big clip. There's plenty of room. There's a lot of space on that side. It's not hard to keep my finger off of that. And man, the action on that is just sublime. I love it. It has such an incredibly crisp break and such an authoritative pop into place. I really, really, really love that. That is a standout feature. What else can I talk about? This lock bar is stiff. There is a chamfer right here. Wow, it's like a whole... Oh, interesting. He did this whole like deep but subtle scallop. It's like an incredibly long scallop. And the result of it being an incredibly long scallop means that this is the kind of thing where you you have more room to get your finger in here, but you're effectively pushing against a flat wall again. So it would be as if there was no scallop or chamfer and the titanium was just thinner. And he does do a very subtle, you can see it glowing right there, a very subtle chamfer. So this isn't a true 90-degree angle, but it is a pretty kind of hard corner that you're pushing against. So I don't find this the most comfortable. This is the kind of thing where it's not hard to open it up because you have plenty of access and you can push on it. It's just not the most comfortable to open up. What else would I talk about this? There is absolutely no skeletonization going on in there, which is why this is such an incredible nugget of a knife. Like I said at the beginning, he said these were not summer knives. And as small as this is, yeah, maybe it's not that tiny small, but as small as this is, yeah, you're not going to want to put this in gym shorts. Like, you probably could fit this in a fifth pocket if your jeans are forgiving enough that they have a really kind of larger, chunkier, thicker fifth pocket knife. I mean, fifth pocket. But the weight on this alone, I'm assuming, should I weigh it? I think I'm just going to weigh it. I'm guessing that this is, like, the blade length looks like it's 2.5 inches, even less. It might be like, yeah, that's like 2.5 inches. And the weight on this has got to be 3.5 ounces, maybe 4 ounces. More. Whoa. Okay, stop rocking. 4.75 ounces. Can you actually see that? Yeah, you can kind of see that, the glare. Anyway, 4.75 ounces on what has got to be, I think, a 2.5 inch blade. So it's a freaking nugget. Okay, this is amazing, though. I have always wanted to check one of these out. That is so freaking cool. I think if the clip were replaceable, you can see that it comes to this kind of narrow bit right there. So it's not going to be an easy swap because that is recessed. So you would need to find a clip designed to replace this because it's not going to be something that can just sit flush. If the clip was replaceable, I would maybe consider getting one of the sheep's foot ones with the hole, because the build quality here feels like a CNC custom. This feels exceptionally well done. But the actual design itself, that clip is not going to work for me in the slightest. And the bigger thing is that I just probably don't have a place in my life in terms of needs for such a nugget of a knife. But I do love nugget knives, so I kind of just adore it. Okay, I probably just need to call it here. This is, I don't know, 50 something minute video. Yeah, I failed that again. Again, lock bar pressure. I'm just putting lock bar pressure on. So these are the knives that Marco sent me. We've got the Olamic Wayfarer 247 in the harpoon blade and the Curtis Knives F3 compact in the hollow ground Tanto. And these are absolutely bonkers. I didn't know if he could possibly keep up the level of insanity he was sending me, but I think he absolutely did. These are very hard to come by knives that are very, very high end and very, very cool to check out. And as he said, these are not summer knives, and these are also things that I would have probably never, ever experienced on my own, especially something in this crazy, fun flame anno and Damasteel. I never would have bought a Damasteel knife. So it is very, very cool to get to experience these. Thank you so much, Marco, for sending these my way. I'm going to have to think long and hard about what I send back to you. I got to pick something cool. And thank you guys all for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.